A fountain of excellent water diffuses a delicious coolness around. In the palace itself we find several large cages for parrots and other beautiful birds. What pleased me most of all was, however, the incomparable kiosk, lying in the garden at some distance from the palace. It is 130 paces long and 100 broad, surrounded by arcades of glorious pillars. This kiosk contains in its interior a large and beautiful fountain, and at the four corners of the buildings are terraces from which the water falls in the form of little cataracts, afterwards uniting with the fountain and shooting upwards in the shape of a mighty pillar. All things around us, the pavilion and the pillars, the walls and the fountain, are alike covered with beautiful marble of a white or light brown color. The pavilion is even arranged so that it can be lighted with gas. From this paradise of the living I rode to the abode of the dead, the celebrated world of graves, which is to be seen in the desert. Here are to be found a number of ancient sepulchres, but most of them resemble ruins, and to find out their boasted beauty is a thing left to the imagination of every traveller. I only admired the sepulchre of Mehemet Ali's 2 sons, in which the bones of his wife also rest. This is a beautiful building of stone. 5 cupolas rise above the magnificent chambers where the sarcophagi are deposited. The petrified date wood lies about 8 miles distant from Cairo. I rode out there, but did not find much to see, excepting here and there some fragments of stems and a few petrifications lying about. It is said that the finest part of this petrified wood begins some miles away, but I did not penetrate so far. During my residence in Cairo the heat once reached 36 degrees Reaumur, and yet I found it much more endurable than I had expected. I was not annoyed at all by insects or vermin, but I was obliged to be careful not to leave any provisions in my room throughout the night. An immense swarm of minute ants would seize upon every kind of eatable, particularly bread. One evening I left a roll upon the table, and the next morning found it half eaten away, and covered with ants within and without. It is here an universal custom to place the feet of the tables in little dishes filled with water, to keep off these insects. Excursion to Suez. It had originally been my intention to stay at Cairo a week at the furthest, and afterwards to return to Alexandria. But the more I saw, the more my curiosity became excited, and I felt irresistibly impelled to proceed. I had now travelled in almost every way, but I had not yet tried an excursion on a camel. I therefore made inquiry as to the distance, danger, and expense of a journey to Suez on the Red Sea. The distance was a 36 hours' journey, the danger was said to be nil, and the expense they estimated at about 250 piastres. I therefore hired 2 strong camels, one for me, the other for my servant and the camel-driver, and took nothing with me in the way of provisions but bread, dates, a piece of roast meat, and hard-boiled eggs. Skins of water were hung at each side of the camels, for we had to take a supply which would last us the journey and during our return. If we rode every day for 12 hours, this journey occupies 6 days, there and back. But as I was unable to depart until the afternoon of the 26th, and was obliged to be in Alexandria at latest by the 30th, in order not to miss the steamer, I had only 4 days and a half to accomplish it. Thus, this excursion was the most fatiguing I had ever undertaken. At 4 in the afternoon I rode through the town gate, where the camels were waiting for us. We mounted them and commenced our journey. The desert begins at the town gates, but for the first few miles we have a sight of some very fruitful country on the left, until at last we leave town and trees behind us, and with them all the verdure, and find ourselves surrounded on all sides by a sea of sand. For the first 4 or 5 hours I was not ill pleased with this mode of travelling. I had plenty of room on my camel, and could sit farther back or forward as I chose, and had provisions and a bottle of water at my side. Besides this, the heat was not oppressive. I felt very comfortable, and could look down from my high throne almost with a feeling of pride upon the passing caravans. Even the swaying motion of the camel, which causes in some travellers a feeling of sickness and nausea like that produced by a sea voyage, did not affect me. But after a few hours I began to feel the fatigues and discomforts of a journey of this kind. The swinging motion pained and fatigued me, as I had no support against which I could lean. The desire to sleep also rose within me, and it can be imagined how uncomfortable I felt. But I was resolved to go to Suez, and if all my hardships had been far worse, I would not have turned back. I summoned all my fortitude, and rowed without halting for 15 hours, from 4 in the afternoon until 7 the next morning. During the night we passed several trains of camels, some in motion, some at rest, often consisting of more than 100. We were not exposed to the least annoyance, although we had attached ourselves to no caravan, but were pursuing our way alone. From Cairo to Suez posts are established at every 5 or 6 hours' journey, and at each of these posts there stands a little house of 2 rooms for the convenience of travellers. These huts were built by an English innkeeper established at Cairo, but they can only be used by very rich people, as the prices charged are most exorbitant. Thus, for instance, a bed for 1 night costs 100 piastres, a little chicken 20, and a bottle of water 2 piastres. The generality of travellers encamp before the house, and I followed the same plan, lying down for an hour in the sand while the camels ate their scanty meal. My health and bodily stretch are, I am happy to say, so excellent that I am ready, after a very short rest, to encounter new fatigues. After this hour of repose I once more mounted my camel to continue my journey. Section 32.